good morning. Today is Saturday, February the 18th. Welcome to Sunrise.
Amayo Makinde, good morning and welcome. By this time next week, you should be at your polling booth trying to vote or get accredited. Well, good thing about the improvement that INEC has made over the years is, before now, you first of all went to accredit yourself and go back home, have breakfast,
and then come back.
come back to
vote. Yeah,
but
which
now,
was cumbersome.
Yes, but now you can accredit to vote and vote at the same time before you go back home to face the rest of your day. So, how ready are you even to vote? Do you even know your polling booth yet? Because that's another struggle a number of people have been having, for some time. There is an easy way to actually go ahead and find out what your location, your polling unit is. Just go to voter.inecnigeria.org. You should be able to find it. Put in some little information that should give you, okay, this is where you are. If your information is on INEC's, website, you would be pointed to the precise location because your voter card has already been geolocated to a particular specific polling unit. That's what we all have to do because, as many people have said over and over again, we have to get it right this time.
So, are you ready?
That's a very good question. Are you ready?
Yes.
And the things that are going to influence people's decisions are happening around us today.
Rallies, town halls, money policy. That just had to come in, didn't it? Because it's the most topical thing in Nigeria today.
Yeah.
The cash swap, or should we say, the repainted currency.
It's actually very interesting what all of that conversation is. And, there are many people who say, generally, governments don't come clean to people. And I wonder why that has to be. Because for me, what it has done? Over the years, it has dissipated trust.
We always talk about the trust quotient, that the people just do not trust government anymore.
And you know what's interesting? It's a global phenomenon.
It is.
Everybody, most people in the world don't trust their governments. And I wonder why. Look, for instance, we had this interview with...
I can tell you why. Because government has been caught out several times saying one thing and doing the exact opposite.
Which is unfortunate and absolutely unnecessary. So we had this, discussion with former Minister of Finance, Dr. Kalu Dikakalu, yesterday. And I was saying, look, some processes haven't been followed. I asked him, look, what are the agencies and all of that that's supposed to be a part of this? It's not something we should be talking about. We all should know. Of course, you can understand having been in government, you don't want to indict anything. But, why would you want to do a policy like that? And it has to be hush-hush. For instance, there are those who believe, for instance, that the relationship between CBN and NSPMC, the printing company, the security and printing company of the nation, is a yearly thing. The question you want to ask, first of all, is, was this Naira redesign part of their conversation with NSPMC this is 2023, in 2021?
Okay.
Because if it was, then orders would have been placed for paper and all those things. So whether or not that was done, I guess that's another conversation altogether.
This decision seems to have been hurriedly taken because everything was so hush-hush. A policy like this is coming up, and this is the kind of thing that 3-6 months before, van tapes will be in the marketplaces, orientation agency would have jingles on radio, jingles on television to sensitize the whole nation. This is going to happen, so we prepare ourselves for it. But this one just came upon us. It was like it was an afterthought on somebody's part. And you wonder why? What are the motives for that? Why isn't it something, it seems like something which wasn't really thought through, which is what Dr. Dikakalu was saying yesterday.
Yeah.
you know.
And
And we are just left to suffer. Look at all the protests around the country yesterday.
when I listened to the president's speech, and I saw the things that were being, that, of course, the content of the speech and all, I had to ask a question rhetorically. Of course, there was no one in the studio with me that could answer the question. I had to ask, is it that some people are blocking the president from hearing some things?
It's possible.
Really? How is that possible?
Because a minister from our constituency, or a former minister from our constituency, when I asked him, he was Minister of Information at the time, of course, I said to him, I said, you seem to be disconnected from us. Don't you hear don't you read the papers? Don't you know what's going on in the country? Don't you hear what people are saying? And he says, well, when you're in those positions high up there, you don't tend to hear everything, and you don't tend to see everything.
Why? It's television. It's right there in your face, right? Or do they scramble for instance, they scramble channels TV so you don't see channels television on your screen? Is it a hotel that you live in?
You only have 1, 2, 3 channels, those or nothing else. Come back.
So but that would explain some things, because some people would just be like, why would such a thing be happening? And then, such vital information will be kept from such a person that should be having that kind of information to act upon.
Yeah, but this time the president did say, I feel your pain. I know what's going on. Please be patient.
Don't forget, it was a speech. And there is such a profession or practice as speech writing. I'm just saying.
Well,
I'm just saying. Don't forget, he didn't speak extemporaneously.
True.
So it was a
True.
speech, and it was written.
But, I would like to add my voice to those who are appealing to people. There's no need to destroy anything. You destroy the ATMs. You are going to need those ATMs tomorrow and next week and next month. Do you know how long it's going to take a bank to replace it for your use? You're destroying banks that you are going to need.
There's this report that came out in the course of the week that banks have lost about 5 billion naira to about 17 or 20 something branches of banks all over the nation. Vandalized for one reason or the other. So as much as possible, if we can find a way to appeal to our people, many of them may not be listening to or watching this now. Look, at the end of the day, someone is going to pay for the things that were destroyed, and we're going to need them again. Where the ATMs have been destroyed, we will have to go into the banks to make withdrawals, and that's going to take a longer time for anyone. Let's not go back to the days of Tali Number.
And in saying someone's going to have to pay for those destructions, guess who that someone is?
It's you. It's you. Because it's you. So, the shareholders in the banks are going to have to cough up money to pay. Even if the insurance company was going to, step in or whatever, the money is going to come from somewhere. It's definitely not from the pockets of the people who own the banks or operate the banks. And definitely, I don't even see how CBN is going to pay for that. So please, let's advise ourselves on that.
So we just have to be a bit more patient. Yes, it's very hard when you don't have money. Like I saw the video of a woman, who wanted to just withdraw 5,000 naira to go and buy food for her child. And that really tore at my heartstrings. Yes, we are, it is not just you going through this, It's all of us. I saw someone yesterday, some big man, I think an SAN, who said he had something like 2 Naira or something in his pocket. And you saw the lawyers who came to the studio last week. So we're all going through it. It's not your exclusive preserve. So please don't go breaking anything and destroying anything, which we're all going to end up paying for. Don't forget that those banks are there to serve us.
Absolutely.
And if you destroy the bank, what's going to happen to you tomorrow?
And don't also forget the story, was it yesterday morning? You know, on the front page of one of the, I think it was a Daily Trust, that talked about a pregnant woman that wasn't attended to because the hospital didn't receive
the
payment alert. And unfortunately, the woman's life was lost.
Oh, dear.
You know, I don't know how to even explain that. And this happened also in Kano State, where the governor said that they had to shut down a supermarket because the supermarket was not accepting the old notes.
And anyway, now that you bring that up, who is accepting the old notes? Supreme Court has ruled. Supreme Court has ruled. Who is accepting the old notes?
That's one of the reasons that I asked the question about whether or not the president is made aware of exactly what is really happening. Because
there was a report on the news last night. The boss man would ask you if you had old or new notes. If you had new notes, enter. If you have old notes, I beg. Nobody's accepting them.
And then another conversation in the conundrum. You know, telcos are saying, don't hold us responsible for failed transactions.
Oh, who should we hold responsible?
I don't know.
Who, NCC?
I don't know.
Oh, Ayamakinde?
I don't know. It definitely isn't Ayamakinde. That much I know. But, okay, so, in fact, they say, that's why when you say this conversation was, this whole Naira redesign thing was rushed, many people would tend to go with you in a number of ways, because did we have the infrastructure to support a full-blown cashless economy?
I feel like calling out my bank right now, because I tried for hours yesterday to transfer money.
I assure you.
And the app would not work.
I assure you, your bank will not be the only one. Others will join you in calling out their banks right now. Look, something happened to me in the course of the week. Let me not mention anything. I went into an eatery. I just went, okay, let me just buy something. I was hungry and I wasn't going straight to a particular place where I could get something that I felt safe enough to eat. So I just stopped by this place. Let me just buy something and eat in the course of my journey, just some, finger foods and all. And I made a transfer.
And it wouldn't go.
3,200.
And it wouldn't go.
From my bank to their bank. They first of all mentioned the one that has red and gray. I said, no. It's okay. Use the other bank. I think that one has one of those, is it Popular or whatever? I don't know. Anyway, I made the transfer. And I was trying to busy myself on the phone. Just next thing, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. What's going on? We're waiting for alert. Really? After some time, 25 minutes.
Which may not come till midnight.
25 minutes, I didn't get anything. I said, and then they, of course, their own customer service was also poor. I just bolted away. I left. I mean...
So has the money been moved from your account to theirs?
The money was moved from my account before I left. About 10 minutes away from after I...
So did you get the food?
I didn't get the food that day. And I was ready to let it go. Because it's time, it's between time and money. Which one is more valuable?
Time.
So I chose to value my time. And, okay, the following day, I had reason to pass there again, and I went to give it to them. I said, where is your Oga Friday? Because that was the supervisor that was just, I don't know. And I said, if I had seen that guy, I don't know what I would have done.
They probably got the alert overnight.
They normally did. Because eventually, one lady was now trying to...
long?
So that's why I'm talking about who should we be taking on concerning internet service. Telco says it's not them. Is it NCC? What kind of conversations are the banks having with the telcos or the ISPs, with the CBN, with the Ministry of, what's it called, Communication and Digital Economy? These conversations should have been had holistically. So many people would agree with you that maybe this conversation was hush-hush. So if, for instance, thankfully we have the option of transferring money now. What if we didn't have? What if all we did was cash, as it happened in, was it 1984?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
Right. So what are we going to be looking at on Sunrise this morning? I mean, aptly, we're going to start with this discussion, still on the Naira redesign policy.
And then we will be having a special guest, to discuss with us this morning. Who this is? Well, it's definitely a conversation around the economy.
And you know that issue in Port Harcourt, Soot menace in Rivers State? We're going to be looking at that as well.
And today on Lifestyle, that's it right on your screen. The healthy lifestyle with Nigerian foods. I don't know if there's anything more healthy than jollof rice, as many people would say, but hey.
With plenty of vegetables.
Okay.
Yes, then we have a very interesting artist of the week, but I'm going to tell you that he is...
He
is a he.
Okay.
And he's a very interesting young artist.
That's all you was going to...
That's all I'm going to divulge at the
moment.
No
further cues?
No.
No further clues?
No.
Does he play music?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Does he play an instrument?
Okay, where are we now? Are we playing charade? So please get your cocoa.
And your cocoa, that one is white. Cocoa is brown. It's chocolate colored. That's it. We'll be right back.
I don't text enough, but you're always on my mind.
Trying to wonder how much is that? How much is in that picture? 1,000 naira is 10 bills. 500 naira notes is under 10 bills. 100 naira is 10 bills.
Someone just needs to do some mental exercise this morning.
I'm just... Okay. Oh, sorry, it's a program. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
The President, Muhammadu Buhari, on Thursday ordered the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to allow the old 200 naira notes and redesigned 200 naira notes, as well as the redesigned 500 and 1,000 naira notes, to coexist. He gave the approval to CBN in a national broadcast, and he said only the old 200 naira should be allowed to come back into circulation. Many have asked, how much impact is that going to have on the issue we have on our hands right now, the issue of no cash, people being able to withdraw 500 naira and having to carry 500 naira around for 2 weeks. 5,000 naira, for 2 weeks. Well, that is, you could say that this policy is helping all of us to be frugal. We're learning to save by force.
You mean conceal?
But do you want to save? Well, to look at this policy with us this morning in the light of the Supreme Court judgment and the President's speech, which seemed to actually disregard what the Supreme Court said, we have with us in the Soot studio a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Yinka Olumide Fusika. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
He has been very quiet lately. I wonder what's going on with him.
Well, I'm not sure he's quiet in the courts.
We'll talk about that later. We also have joining us via Zoom Professor Bongo Adi, Professor of Economy, Lagos Business School. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's been a long time.
Thank you for joining us. Let me start with you, Professor. How disruptive has this whole policy been, do you think?
Well, I think the fact is out there for everyone to see. It has disrupted the system, caused so much anxiety, and is beginning to boil over. I do not know how long this is going to last. I've been listening to the conversation two of you have been having, and that is exactly how it is. So people are really frustrated when people Especially people who live at the lower rung of the ladder, seeking for the cash because all their transactions, all their daily, expenses and lives, run around cash. Very small monies, so they're looking for cash to, do the basic things, procure the basic things of life, and then that is not forthcoming. So it's creating a lot of problems. Take for transportation, for instance. None of the bus drivers or the taxi drivers, has any sort of payment system apart from people paying them cash. So it means that people cannot move from place to place because there is no cash. So that's actually disrupted the system. Anything that touches transportation and the food system affects everybody, and you can't play with that.
Professor, the small business people, most of them operate on cash basis. How is that going to affect the economy as a whole? Because many of them can't even do any business now. Nobody has any cash to pay them.
Yeah, the inflation figures came out a few days ago, 2 days ago, right? And then it shows that inflation has increased even more. So we are looking at inflation that has averaged for the month of January 22%, 21.8% is approximately 22%. So inflation is going up. And then what does that mean? I listened to the president 2 days ago in his address. He read out the facts. And of course, as an economist, it made sense. Maybe if you allow me, look at the reasons he gave. And I'm sure that it's people from the CBN that gave him that speech, of course. They said that over the years, when they came to power in 2015, they just had about 1.5 trillion naira, as calculation, and much of that was under the central bank control. But then, as at the end of last year, it has increased to about 3 trillion. So in fact, they have 3.7 trillion as cash in circulation. But out of that, the only thing that comes back to the central bank, the one they can control as the money supply, is only 500 billion. So 500 billion isn't much to affect anything when it comes to monetary policy, management. That is the sole preserve of the central bank, the management of inflation through controlling of the money supply. So what he's saying, he mentioned the velocity of money. I hope he understands what that means. So, when we computed the velocity, which is the rate at which money changes hands. So if you have an economy that is the size of, say, 200 naira, then money in circulation, money supply is 10 naira. So it simply means that every naira, every note will have to move around about 20 times. That is 200 over 10. So that is very high level of velocity, and that creates inflation. Okay, but naturally, from economic studies, we know that velocity of money is not above 5 or something like that. Then when we looked at that of Nigeria, let's say, assuming that the money supply is 3.7 trillion, you have the velocity over 10 years from 2012 till last year, it's about just one, just one. So not much, and then it shouldn't cause inflation. But then I think I can understand when they say that the money they have under their control is just 500 billion as against 3.7 trillion. Then it means that the velocity is higher. It could actually be more than 10. So that makes their argument, okay, we can take them seriously, that velocity of money is high and it's causing inflation, and then they needed to find a way to bring back all those monies into the central bank system. Okay. But then the approach that they have adopted, is that the best? One of my colleagues talking about this, who is also a lawyer, said that it's something akin to the president burning a rare forest simply because he wants to catch one big rat. So, well, I don't know what this big rat is or who the big rat is, and I don't know if this big rat justifies the burning of this rare forest. People are, everybody's suffering. Small businesses are suffering, and it's definitely going to impact the growth of the economy. So already we are in an election season. So for the first half of this year, we don't expect any sort of implementation of the budget. We're just this is a time when whenever there is election, we sit it out until the election. There is a handover of power. Before we can see any direction in the economy. So normally we don't expect growth, but then with this situation, the prospect for growth is definitely going to worsen. And that's not going to be good for the economy. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olumide Fusika. We have discussed the Supreme Court judgment and its and the government saying that they will obey, and the president's speech showing that they didn't actually obey. And then we had a state government actually make an address to his state saying that they were going to obey the Supreme Court judgment and people should continue to do business in the old currency along with the new. What does all this mean in law? Does it mean that we now have a state within a state? The federal government doing one thing or ordering one thing, and the state government saying that they're going to do something entirely different?
Well, it may seem maybe because of what it involves, but if you look back at the history of this administration from 2015, you will realize that there's really nothing new about what El-Rufai has said. Not only El-Rufai, some other governors. From day one, it has been like this, confusion. Nobody knows who is in control of the country. So many examples that we can give. The president says something, his ministers are saying something else, Take something as simple as police recruitment into the police force. The Police Service Commission says we are in control. The Inspector General of Police, who is supposed to be under the Police Service Commission, says, no, I'm the one going to do the recruitment. And then we have a president just sitting there, doesn't really, as long as it doesn't affect him. So the only thing odd about this now is that you actually have a funny situation where the party in power is attacking his own president, so to say, disassociating itself from the policies of his own government.
And the party in power is now its own opposition.
Thank you. And then you have those in opposition actually now canvassing for the party, for the president in power. What that tells us is that this is all political. We are like the interest of the country is really nothing to these people. I mean, the interest of the masses of Nigerians. It's unfortunate that because of the effect of this policy on the average Nigerian, politicians are coming in to try and take advantage. Anybody who believes them, El-Rufai, for instance, that El-Rufai is fighting for rule of law and all that, may have himself to blame, because if you look at, in serious terms, El-Rufai is just fighting for his own political relevance post-2023. That's all what it is all about. And I've seen, if you were to be a citizen or a resident of Kaduna, and they bring you 500, 1,000, would you take it? Most people won't take it. It's just, talking, just to be, but it's just empty talk.
Speak to the issues. I mean, the dynamics of each individual is definitely not in doubt here.
Yes.
But let's speak to the issues raised. The governor of Kaduna State predicated his position on the Supreme Court ruling. And the fact that at the end of the day, the money is never really going to be lost. People will get value for their money at whatever time they eventually take it to the CBN. But speak to the issues that he raised there, in that, look, people are having challenges. The CBN made a ruling, and I don't know how the judiciary actually feels. Perhaps if you first of all speak to that, then we'll come back to the governor's position. The CBN, the Supreme Court made a ruling, stay action until, reiterated the same thing on the 15th of February. Stay action until, I think it was after then, that the federal government, the president made that speech, said, okay, we are aware of what the courts, not the Supreme Court, said.
Again, this is coming up because of what it involves. Disobedience to court order is part and parcel. It's in the bloodstream of the administration. Once they are in power, including El-Rufai himself. So many court orders, if they don't agree with the judgment, they do their own judgment and just go ahead and do whatever they like. You even had him coming on here one time to say the National Industrial Court is using very bad language, because maybe he has sacked some people, and the National Industrial Court says you sacked them wrongly. And he feels, oh, why should you say that? And he was canvassing for the whole institution of the National Industrial Court to be, condemning the entire institution simply because of that. So, about disobedience, none of them can come up and say, once the court makes an order, we obey. Now, we need to understand, some of my colleagues have come up to say, oh, CBN was not joined as a party, therefore the CBN, the order cannot be effective, and so on and so forth. I will humbly disagree with them. Let me give an example that I think will drive home the point. The Nigerian state, has condemned somebody. When I say Nigerian state, I mean when you have the state has condemned somebody to death, so to say. And, the court says, stay action. When someone is sentenced to death, somebody actually carries it out. The hangman or the person that will shoot. It says, the court says, stay action, don't, and then somebody says, the hangman just goes ahead and, hang the, carry out the sentence. And when, why did you carry out this sentence? He says, I'm not a party to the case. They didn't join me. That is what
that's taking it to the ridiculous.
No, that's what that kind of argument means. Once you are aware of the order, you have to obey it. You must obey. You can't say you are not an outlaw. You don't exist outside the law. So once the order is made, you must obey it. You understand? So for somebody to say, oh, CBN was not joined, those are just, lawyers, they like to argue, just bring all kinds of arguments that are, sometimes you find very, very funny. So everybody in Nigeria, and those particularly concerned, must carry out the decision of the Supreme Court. Of course, there has been arguments about, has the Supreme Court original jurisdiction to have even gone into the matter and so on and so forth. These are just, it's the Supreme Court. It is the Supreme Court. It is not me. It's not I or any other person that will determine. They will determine whether they have jurisdiction or not. If you believe they don't have original jurisdiction, go there and canvass it. They are not unreasonable people. They will listen to you. And if they believe they don't have original jurisdiction in the matter, even El-Rufai talking, does he know what the outcome of the case will be? He doesn't know whether the Supreme Court will eventually throw out the case, whether it will grant the... Nobody knows.
Perhaps that's the point. Because as we have already identified, the Supreme Court took a position. We will hear this case.
Yes.
But for now, let no action be taken until we take the first step of, first of all, declaring jurisdiction, and then we now hear the substance of the case.
Yes.
But at this time, let the old notes remain in circulation, active. That was the position of the Supreme Court. Now that, you've said it, the court's decision ought to be obeyed. As it is now, would you say it has been obeyed in any way, manner, shape, or form?
Well, I think that what has brought the complication into the whole thing is when the Supreme Court says, stay action, let the old order remain until we are able to determine this matter. The president then went ahead to make this speech that we are talking about, which seems to me to be prejudging the matter and sort of telling the Supreme Court, this is what I would do. The outcome of your case is not important to me, whatever you decide. That may be the implication of what the president did by coming out to say, this is what I would do and so on. I think that he should just have left the matter until the 22nd is just around the corner. Is it 22nd or 23rd when the Supreme Court will hear the matter? As to the effectiveness of that order, is a different thing, Oh,
really?
It's a different thing because people on their own, they don't have confidence that if they have 500, 1,000, despite the order of the Supreme Court, that it will be. Okay, let me give you an example. Of course, they came out later to deny. I read on the social media that some of my colleagues went to file court cases at the Lagos State High Court with these Naira notes. The court, I don't know how far it's true, I've not investigated, but I read it.
Yes.
The court didn't accept the money. So it shows you that there's a difference between, effectiveness on the ground. People don't have confidence because of the confusion. We are in a state of anarchy, confusion. Everybody.
Even though the Lagos State Judiciary put out a notice, on that.
So I'm correct to say that there was something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that shows you that functionaries of the Lagos State government didn't know. We're not ready to obey the decision of Lagos State government until the Lagos State government now put out a notice to say you must obey. That shows the level of confidence. This thing is about confidence. You understand? Confidence of the people in, okay, if I keep this money, would I be able to...
Which now goes back to the issue that I wanted us to raise about. I'm going to come back to you, Prof, just wanted to clear this part, which brings us back to the pronouncement of the governor of
the alternate president.
No, governor of Kaduna State.
It's the alternate president.
Because he's not the only one. I think the...
No, you actually made this. The president made a speech.
Yes.
Yeah.
Immediately after, he came out to make his own speech, countering everything that the president has said. So it's how
but the point that I'm making about that is his position was predicated on that, as I said, I just want to stay on the issues. His position is predicated on the decision of the Supreme Court, as opposed to the position of the president, which you also agree with many who say it is not in agreement with the position of the Supreme Court.
Look, we should all be careful so that we don't become pawns in the hands of these politicians. We want peace in Nigeria. Some of the people protesting about this, I read this morning, a pregnant woman or something died in Kano or something because they were waiting for. So it has effect on the grassroots.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. So if a governor or some governors, the president is saying something, they are coming out, I think they must have a way to communicate with each other. This grandstanding of, I don't understand why you say we should stay on the point. The president made a speech. A governor came out, countering everything, attacking the president, telling us that there is a cabal somewhere and all that. There are people planning to impose interim government. The policy is against their party, and so on and so forth. It may be, don't get me wrong, but there must be a decent way of resolving this kind of issues.
What could be more decent than obeying the instruction of the Supreme Court?
I have not said that the instruction should not be obeyed. I've not said so. I'm saying that don't throw this country into chaos.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. And in any case, look, if I have a loot of 1 billion naira in 1,000 naira notes, the effect of what the president has said is take it to the CBN. I'm not saying the president is right, he disobeyed, but when elephants fight, it's not me that will come and suffer. It will be between the Supreme Court and the president. But look, what he has said is, if I have a loot of, I've stashed up a loot of 1 billion, and I have it in 1,000 naira notes, take it to the CBN, they will collect it from me. If I took it there,
you have to justify.
No, I don't need to justify it. Why do I need to justify?
Oh, no, there's a process.
Where did you get it from?
No, that's a different thing. They cannot, you can't take my money because you don't know where. You should have the confidence. I will have the confidence. I mean, I will have the confidence to take my 1 billion.
But you called it a loot.
No, I'm just describing it that way. If I have, if I took it to the CBN, and they give me back in 200 Naira notes, the important thing is that I have my money back. Nobody has a right to a particular denomination.
Okay. Well, Prof, I read a statement, or rather, some comment attributed to Dr. Teriba that the instruction of the president that 200 Naira notes should be recirculated, the old 200 Naira notes should be recirculated along with the new Naira notes. He said that the value of the 200 Naira notes is no more, it's not even up to 250 billion Naira. Add that to the 400 billion that is in circulation, is nothing close to at least 1 trillion Naira. That, I mean, might be a little bit manageable to calm the tension that people are going through now. How do you make, what do you make of that, instruction of the president, or a counsel or directive of the president to the CBN, and how significant do you see that being?
Well, I think I've discussed that in a different fora yesterday, and then my view is that what the president did in his address was to, offer some sort of a reprieve to the suffering, citizens of the country. So, and from all intents and purposes, he was not willing to, change track with this new policy, if you listen to the address. And I like what the learned Seun just said. I wouldn't be caught into that. I'm not a lawyer. So the truth of the matter is that this is a policy that the central bank has decided to bring on board right now in the system. When you people were discussing earlier, we were asking whether this is the right time. Why didn't they sensitize the people before rolling it out? Why didn't they start, much earlier? And perhaps they could have taken a staggered approach, rather than, this blanket approach of taking out 1,000 Naira notes, 500 and 200. Maybe they should have started with 1,000. Then after some time, 500 or so. I mean, it shouldn't even have raised any sort of problem, because if you bring any typical notes right now, you will notice that it's been produced within this MFLA regime and signed by MFLA as the governor, meaning that the notes that were signed by Sanusi when he was the governor a few years ago, they've all gone out of circulation, and then CBN have managed to retrieve most of that, and we don't see them. So that didn't cause any problem. But I think the issue here is that they spoke about managing inflation. Now, it's also good to put that in perspective. Because of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the global economy is just reeling, with the aftermath of that, which is inflation, supply chain shock, high energy costs. That is actually, has really destroyed so many Western economies. And every central bank in the world has been, trying to manage this rampaging inflation. And then the way they're doing it is to raise rates. They've been raising rates, even the United States, to the point where it is no longer working. So they are looking for unorthodox, unconventional monetary policies to see how they can rein in this inflation, problem. So here in Nigeria, I think they came up with this redesign of the currency as a way, and then they've justified the reason, and I find that very plausible. But then what we are really dealing with right now is the aftermath, the impact it is having on the people. I think maybe they didn't think through it, maybe they did, but there was some sabotage here and there. If the policy went as planned and then the newly printed notes were available to the people, I'm sure that we wouldn't be in this sort of situation that we are right now. So, I mean, you also mentioned the case of the woman who lost her life, the pregnant woman that we lost as, because the transaction didn't go through. I won't just, attribute that, associate it with this development, because, I know of a situation where somebody had an accident, had to be taken to the emergency unit of the hospital. But they wouldn't touch the person until they've found about #1 million plus. But then the #1 million plus wasn't forthcoming. And then because they didn't get it, and then the person also lost his life. So that's very common with hospitals. Once they don't get their money, they are not. But I think we have to act as human beings. I think that's the issue here. People are just being unnecessarily frenetic, and then causing pandemonium unnecessarily.
Perhaps their own, as you said, frenetic actions is based on their own experiences as well, because the cash just isn't available anywhere. Okay, well, since the SAN here, Mr. Olumide Fusika, has spoken a lot about the governor of Kaduna State, let me quote a part of his speech that you might want to speak to. He said the CBN claimed that 700 billion naira is the amount of cash needed for their functioning vision of a cashless Nigerian economy. The chief economic advisor to the president, Dr. Doyin Salami, disagrees with this estimate and believes that at least 2 trillion naira of currency needs to be in circulation for our economic sustainability. What's your take on that?
Again, I don't understand that, because that seems to be in conflict with what the president, addressed 2 days ago. In the president's speech, the currency in circulation, cash, is 3.7 trillion, out of which what the central bank has, coming back to them that they really see is 500 billion. So meaning that we have an excess of how many 3.2 billion lying outside the control of 3.2 trillion lying outside the control of the central bank. So, I think it's about 3.2. So 500 is what they have. So 2.7 is lying outside.
Yeah.
Now, the president mentioned that in the past 1 month, by the end of January, they've managed to retrieve 2.1 trillion. So they still have an excess of about 600 billion to bring back from the system. So you could see that even if they are, using the normal process, if they had released these notes, perhaps what they could have done is to bring just 500 billion, which is not the amount of currency that's lying outside. So the 2.7, has been perennially out of the system, meaning that it's the money that politicians and so on, kind of put in bunkers. They were not part of the money supply. So let us look at it from that point of view. And I think I can understand it, because from the point of view of economics, if you look at it from the what we call the quantity theory of money, quantity theory of money states that inflation results from, a money supply. Okay, so you have a quantity. If once you increase the quantity of money, inflation increases, and then that also has impact on velocity of money. I've mentioned that earlier. So because we have just very small amount, fraction of currency in circulation, that's 500 billion, and then we have an economy that is the size of our GDP. The size of our GDP. It's about $400 billion, right? So when you have such a size of GDP, and then that is propelled by just a small amount of currency in circulation, 500 billion naira, that won't get anywhere. It means that inflation will be high because velocity of money will be very, very high. I agree with the president there, because you have to make this connection before you begin to see what the central bank is necessary. Perhaps what I can advise is that, okay, we find a way to ameliorate some of these difficulties that people are experiencing. And by the way, we are not the only economy in the world that have successfully transited to a cashless economy. And don't forget that this cash-based system that we run, creates a lot of inflation, by the way. Nigeria is one of the, the quality of things we have in Nigeria is so low.
Well, Prof, my apologies for butting in. Yeah. Very quickly, everyone, I don't think anyone is against the policy by the substance of it.
Let's see.
Perhaps the challenge is, one, in the implementation, and two, the infrastructure that should support the cashless system the way it actually should be. Because you are certainly unaware of many unsuccessful delayed financial transactions over the past few weeks or months?
No, I've experienced that. Okay. Actually, as we speak, I have a lot of that that's not been settled by the banks. Okay, look at what some of my senior banking friends say. They say that their IT personnel have all jackpot. They've all moved to Canada and to Europe and to many parts of the world. Now, banks are struggling to retain their services, meaning that they have to pay them even more, in order to, keep servicing their systems. So these guys are in Canada. It is when they are awake that the system runs. When they sleep, the system doesn't run. That is why you experience at some point in the day your system.
Which then now raises the question, Prof, that I'm trying to get to. On the one hand, we want to go cashless. On the other hand, infrastructure to support a cashless economy significantly isn't there. So, and then there, of course, is the digital education, digital knowledge of people. The question I want to just put to you, just a second, sir. The question I want to put to you is, given our peculiarity as a nation, as at today, how much in cash should be liquid in the economy, not sitting in banks, so that Nigerians can have this liquid, cash? As you said, most people would rather deal with cash. We are not the first people to want to go digital. I agree with you on that. A good number of people agree with it. But it is the infrastructure that supports it that perhaps a challenge here.
I agree with you that, I agree with you on the aspect of infrastructure that we have limited, especially financial or fintech. And I think that's what the central bank should have done, anticipating that they were going to roll out this policy at this point in time. Perhaps part of all these monies they've been dishing around in fact, I've not been a fan of the central bank governor or the central bank. I've criticized them. But the two institutions that are lacking in credibility, and I think that is why we're having all this problem, the two major institutions in Nigeria that have lost all credibility in the past 8 years are the central bank and the Supreme Court. And both of them are now in conflict. You see, so there's loss of confidence and creating a whole lot of problems. I think the central bank should have, first of all, addressed this infrastructure problem. It's not there are so many Nigerians, very smart Nigerians, developing fintech apps and all of that to ease transactions, all of that. All these people needed were just support, to give, help them to scale. If they had done that, okay, we would not be in this situation. Like Kenya. You know about M-Pesa in Kenya. So people transact using their phones. Everybody, market women, everywhere. So Kenya has gone cashless for a very long time. But because the government took a deliberate approach to it, by supporting M-Pesa and all of that, we should have adopted those kind of technologies before now.
Okay.
But again,
now that we're where we are, because I want to quickly take on the SAN here in the studio. In your opinion, ideally, given our current circumstance, situation, and all of that, how much would you say should be in circulation today for all of these issues that you raised around liquidity and all to be stable for the economy?
You see, we don't need to have, cash is not necessarily the notes you carry around, okay? So we have to look at it from the point of view of money supply, money in circulation. So the CBN has mentioned, they have about 3.7 trillion. So the issue here is that we want to reduce inflation and we want to maintain a stable velocity of money. So that's looking at that velocity, that should be the target. So I've shown that if we are looking at what we see as money supply, okay, money in circulation, the velocity of money is 1. So if that is the target of the CBN, so the money supply or the money in circulation should be such that we will achieve the velocity target of just 1. That is what will determine that. I don't know what that's going to be. It depends on how they're able to work it out, such that the velocity of money is just 1, so that it is possible to regulate inflation.
Okay. Well, I was looking for a figure, but let me come to you, Mr. Olumide Fusika. You heard what the Prof said there about the credibility of the CBN and Supreme Court being dissipated over the years.
Well, I'm a lawyer, a senior advocate for that matter, so I don't want you to see it as defending my profession. But the truth of the matter is politics is divisive. And what has led to what he referred to as, reputational damage to the judiciary or to the Supreme Court is because of political cases. You know, if you take political cases to court, because politics itself is divisive, there's no judgment that the Supreme Court will give that would not have one side applauding, another side saying condemning it. I wouldn't want to say more than that. As for the CBN, you know, I heard what the press said. If it's not, see, I've gone to ATM to collect money, and you see a lot of people queuing up. And I'm talking of Lagos, not the rural areas. If you
Where they don't have banks anyway.
If you see, perceive the amount they are collecting, very small amounts of money, 2,000, 5,000, 3,000, and so on and so forth. Don't forget that this policy we are talking about, we still have, if I'm not mistaken, 20 Naira note is not changed. 50 Naira note, not changed. 100 Naira note is not changed.
And they're not available?
You know, the problem is, if you make this available through the ATMs or whatever, people will be able to collect the little amount of money they need. Yes. The trillions they are talking about, the trillions are, if those trillions are available to Nigerians, they won't be in this level of poverty that we are talking about. The trillions they are talking about are the money that the governors have. You heard recently, the wife, I'm not saying it is correct because, you know, you never know with the EFCC. The wife, the cousin or whatever of one governor, I think Kogi State or something, you know, how they were dealing in cash, huge amounts of money. That's where all these trillions are going to. The trillions are not with the Nigerian people. So let's not go into, you say 200 Naira, you've released it. Are people that are fighting, struggling, fighting in the street now. Give them, if it's 10,000 they want to put it there, let them be able to. But if one of them, well, a former politician who has tried to, Dr. Banire recently posted something, that the reason why these politicians are shouting is because they normally keep this loot in 500 and 1,000. They don't keep it in 200 in lower denomination because it's more portable to take it. As for the CBN, I'm sure that this policy, the president may have told the CBN governor a long time ago, we are going to do this around this time. Rather than buckling down, sitting down to do the work, what he was doing was to try to become president himself. He was jumping all over the place.
Just a quick one before we sign out in a few seconds now. You also heard a statement from the Supreme Court saying we can bark, not bite, and that people should criticize the Supreme Court cautiously. What does that mean? What exactly what action can the CBN, the Supreme Court take?
Well, if you commit contempt of court, you can be taken up. If you criticize in a manner that is, for instance, you can even criticize overboard. You can't say anything about them. But if you make insinuations that are not right, for instance, you collected money to deliver this judgment and so on, you attack the moral authority of members of the Supreme Court without justifiable reason or proof. You can be taken up on that to come and establish what you have alleged. That said, I would want to say that what we do is render service. I mean, the whole gamut of the judiciary, lawyers, judges, we render service. And when you render service, you should be open to criticism. If they criticize us, let's look at, why are they criticizing us? Can we improve? I think that would be the better reaction to it than, is this criticism justifiable? Are we not communicating properly? Do they not understand why we have done what we have done? Yeah. We are not above the society. People who consume the services we render are entitled to. And if you look at the statement that was even issued, you would think it's Lai Mohammed or any of these other political people issuing statement, threatening and so on and so forth. I think the language was also not too good. Even if you are going to respond in a, in a way that you let people understand that their belief, whatever they believe, is wrong. And this is the reason why we have. So we don't threaten people. So we'll do this and all that.
Okay.
That's
quickly now, just before we wind up, Mr. Olumide Fosika, do you trust government's reason for this new policy? Or reasons?
No, a professor has spoken about the economic effect and so on and so forth. if we are able to achieve all that would be just accidental. Yes, it wasn't the reason why the president has said it's not the reason, why he wanted the money changed. He said so several times, and I think I listened to Keyamo yesterday saying that it's maneuver, they are out-maneuvering each other. It's all about, politics. Maybe the president believes that his colleagues in this thing, he has contested twice, and he knows how they use money to put him in office. So, he now doesn't want them to use the same money to put themselves in office. So, speaking from experience.
You are a senior advocate of Nigeria. If anything comes, we'll send it to you.
No, but that's it. It's contested twice. I don't want to go, did you read Ayikoyama, by the way, The Beautiful One Not Yet Born? This mythical bird, Chichi Dodo. Yeah, I think that's the name. He hates feces, but he eats maggots from the... So what he does is put his bum by the side, put his beak inside the...
Mr. Olumide Fusika, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you very much for coming to share your insight with us this morning. And we also had a professor of the economy who joined us from the Lagos Business School via Zoom, Professor Bongo Adi. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
So Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Do join us.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us this morning. Well, next is to have a conversation, as you've seen there, with Dr. Mustafa Akinkunmi, who is an African economist with more than 30 years of experience using technology, statistical and econometric methods of estimating, forecasting, and predicting macroeconomic and financial-related data set. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Well, let's begin with well, it's not an elephant in the room. It's quite a humongous one right here, talking about technology and all of that, especially the role it has to play in this transition that we're making into a cashless economy. What's your take on the entire conversation?
Look, something similar like this happened in the turn of the millennium. If I recollect, I was on Wall Street then. I was doing quants, and everybody was scared that things we will not be able to get our data back. Essentially, what it means by that is that for many years we had 2 digits, 19, and we're now getting to 99. So we had to add, typically we usually add 1 to it. So we now thought, things were going to blow up. So many of us were much younger. I was slightly younger then, and we spent a whole year, or even more than that, testing all different applications and making sure that this thing will work and will succeed. I think that is where CBN failed. Great policy, but I think they did not go through the process properly to the bottleneck with the technology, and especially when it comes to the tremendous amount of heat was expected, at least from the transaction going on the electronic side. And of course, on the cash side, the cash in circulation is a whole total different story entirely. I have my views on that, but it's unfortunate. But it's great policy, but it's just the implementation that some of us have to deal with.
Yeah, we'll come to your take on what the liquidity ratio should be, but speak to that technology part, a little more. What are the options available to us in the light of 1, the population, 2, internet integration or penetration, 3, digital knowledge or education of the people, 4, the number of banked or unbanked, 5, maybe state of the economy. I could go on and on. Maybe I already caught the African economist bug from you right now.
You see, look, my experience spanned between technology, economics, and finance. That is what I spent the last almost 40 years. Now I'm telling my age, about 40 years of my life doing. So we didn't have much of an issue, of course, up until last month, when this issue of they're pulling the cash out of the economy. However, we had some of the jackpot syndrome of the technology kids running out of the country. And I thought, in my opinion, was that a lot of the bank execs, they acted too slow to be able to keep those guys. I was one of those guys in the 90s when in New York City, when they started paying many of us were kept in the back office, and they saw the importance of technology, and those companies in those days started paying many of us the front office salary. And I think what a lot of the banks, the mistake they made, they should have topped these guys, keep them in front of Japa. So they should have upped their remuneration at least close to 100 million and keep those, because a lot of these banks are making those profits. So why let them go? And many of us are now suffering. But that's another story. But back to CBN. CBN did not address the amount of penetration of what potentially would happen, because they should have tested that, and they should have increased the amount of usage of individuals, at least that are involved in the electronic banking part of the transactions. So that's essentially that's what happened, because the story, you have so many people that their transaction could not commit for hours, for days. That's as a result of the number of hits that was going on. So that's a whole different issue from the cash in circulation. Cash in circulation is another totally different story entirely. As I said again, great policy. The president has spoken, and I support the policy. I think it's the right thing to do. The benefit outweighs the issues and challenges that we faced in the last few days.
Dr. Kikume, you say that our banks failed to see the importance of keeping these, should I call them back office tech workers? But you have been a consultant to the Central Bank of Nigeria. And I think that your advice to the Central Bank of Nigeria would have percolated down to the commercial banks as well, so that they would have known what to do.
Unfortunately, I left Central Bank. I was in Central Bank as a consultant for a decade. And my last day at the Central Bank was December 2017. So that was quite some time ago. And things have changed since then. I mean, of course, if Central Bank had called me, I would have advised them at least to pay attention to the technology aspects of the whole cash in circulation. They should have paid more attention to that. They should have worked closely with NIPS. They should have worked closely with the mobile payment company. They should have worked closely with the InterSwitch of this world, and make sure that at least that they have enough bandwidth to be able to handle the amount of transactions.
Okay. Now that we are where we are, what would your advice be in that regard?
Well, my advice in that regard is that, look, and I'm sure CBN is addressing all those issues right now. I think, I believe that the transaction has improved. I was able to make few transactions yesterday. And so I think CBN is reacting to a lot of these issues on a daily basis. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think next week, I think things will improve. I think the president spoke last, was it yesterday or Thursday morning? The president spoke, and 200 Naira should be available. A lot of the financial tech companies are up to date. they are addressing this issue. I think next week things should improve. But what I find quite interesting, because I've been monitoring this, is that for some reason, there are not much issues and outcry in the North. A lot of it is right here in down South. And what I found out is that because I went to visit a few of those banks, I walked around and disguising, and I spoke to a few of them. It seems that some of these guys don't, I think some of if you find out, at least what I discovered was that some of these guys don't even have any bank accounts. So what is the motivation behind it? The ones that are at least causing trouble and trying to burn down some of the bank branches.
But what do you make of that, really? Because, I mean, looking at the poverty figures, you would see that a lot more people, well, the North is said to have a lot more people, within that extremely poor category, as opposed to, down South here. So one would wonder why the angst, so to speak, more from the South as opposed to being from the North.
It's definitely a subject of research. I mean, there's more poverty in the North, less outcry in the North, but there's a lot in the South. It's definitely something of concern.
Okay, so to you then, what would you say Nigeria needs to recover from? Because, we just talked about poverty now, right? And there are those who are saying many of these things, the issues we are raising today, date back decades, even way before the 40 years that you've been doing this job, as you say. There are those who say these things have been building up over the years. We have hopes that things are going to get better, and the only things to get the other way. So what do we need to recover from? And what are the structural changes that need to be made if things are going to get better?
Look, let me tell you something. Things, without prejudicing, Nigeria has changed significantly since 2015. And that is as a result of lack of clarity. And that is what we're seeing now with the ruling party. So, from 2015, before I address what we need now, I'm just going to throw some figures at you. From 20, I would talk about the federal government's revenue and debt service. So we were using 23% of our revenue to service our debt, on the average, from 2011 to 2014. And from 2015 to 2018, that number moved up to 52% of our revenue. And today, that number is about 80% of our revenue. That is the story. Look, I can take you one step back to Babangida Abacha era. It's a mirror of what we're experiencing right now. And after 1999, two great Nigerians took over. His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar. His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo spent significant amount of time, the first 4 years, traveling the world, improving Nigerian image. And His Excellency Atiku Abubakar sat at home and focused on the economy. And the economy improved. We were able to have double-digit growth for the first time in a very long time. And as a result, many of us, including myself, I moved back from New York City, back to Lagos, Nigeria. I started my economic think tank. We all believed in Nigeria, right? And Nigeria moved forward. And so many stories, I always give the example of MTN, of the 2 trillion in revenue. That came through that time. So the key thing and what we need, what Nigeria needs, we need three C's. I keep saying that. We need clarity. We need coherent and consistency. When you don't have the 3 C's, capital doesn't come. Nobody will believe you.
A quick one, Prof. Before you mentioned something, Dr. Akinkumi, about, you mentioned some figures now, and some people would also ask the question, how that, of course, I mean, as my colleague reminded you, having worked with the CBN at some point, the CBN has sort of overshot the limit of 5% granted it by the Central Bank Act, Section 38, by printing more than 23 trillion naira instead of 1 trillion naira, Is there a connection between that and inflation?
Of course. There's a price you pay, the seigniorage you pay. There is no cooperation between the physical side and the monetary side today. We're in a mess. The ways and means, the CBN, it's illegal for CBN to do that. And we all kept quiet. Everybody's screaming today. They didn't talk about that. Everybody kept quiet. All the ruling party governors, they didn't talk about that. The ruling party governors that are talking about cash in circulation, they didn't talk about that. They didn't talk about the inflation. Let me tell you something about inflation. But what this man, Richard Nixon, did in the 70s in America, when inflation was so high, the man stepped in and fixed prices for the first time. A government would do that. Fast forward today, in America, a lot of companies are giving subsidy. Not even the government. Companies are giving subsidies for employees towards buying food. The ruling party governors that are screaming today, they didn't address inflation for their people. They didn't talk about the Chibok girls. We all forgot about the Chibok girls, right? They didn't talk about the kidnapping, but they're now talking about cash. And again, let's look at this cash very carefully. Before this ruling party, the cash in circulation was about 1.4 trillion. September of last year was about 3.4 trillion. Keep in mind that we have high inflation.
Dr. Akinkumi, I'm sorry, I've got to cut you short because we've fast run out of time, and I need to ask you about the budget. We've all been consumed by politics, so nobody is looking at implementing the budget. So whoever comes in is going to have a hard job looking at the 2023 budget and having to implement it.
You see, there's a supplementary budget. And the supplementary budget was to address the flooding incidents. And while they are doing the supplementary budget, they were preparing the 2023 budget. I don't understand why they couldn't put that in the 2023 budget. But that's another story for another day. I totally disagree with the initial projections on this budget because it's not based on the current trends, like the inflation numbers, like the oil production numbers. So whoever comes in, and I'm hoping Atiku Abubakar makes it, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar makes it, would have to readdress that budget. Look, how do we finance government? We finance government with debt, and we finance government with internet generating. We have to improve on that internet because it's actually quite poor. I'll tell you what I experienced in the last couple of days. I was in the Republic of Benin, Cotonou. And you know what these guys are doing? I went out to dinner on the Valentine's Day. So they have, for every transaction that happens, it hits the office of the revenue. So what I mean by that is that if you buy a plane ticket, you go to the restaurant, you check into a hotel, at the back end, so they are capturing every transactions. So what I mean by that is that, I understand this because I came from technology. So what I mean by that is that you can have any POS system you want, but in the back end, the government gets it. When we implement that, we don't need to raise taxes.
Okay.
We will capture every transactions and increase.
Yeah.
And that will help significantly with our budget and will address all these projections in the budget. Because the key thing about the budget is really the projections, which does not work with the current trends.
One thing that one can say affirmatively is there's a lot more that you have to say. Unfortunately, we have run completely out of time. As my colleague said the other time, we'll have to continue this conversation some other time. But for now, we have to thank you, Dr. Mustafa.
Thank you very much.
An African economist. Thank you so much for the perspectives you've given us today.
Thank you.
Okay. So Sunrise continues right after this break. Please stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. I hope that you, well, I suppose that you have heard about the overcloud in some areas of Rivers State, the Soot that has engulfed the area in recent times. And if you recall, the governor went out at one time to try and look for the source of it, and actually ended up destroying a lot of illegal refineries, which we hear are a source of the Soot, which is causing some health concerns.
Certainly.
In that area as well, you know. So we're being joined this morning by Dr. Eugene Abels, Executive Director, the Extra Step Initiative, and he's joining us from our studio in Abuja. Good morning, Dr. Abels.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm not a doctor.
You are not a doctor?
Yet.
No.
Mr. Eugene Abels, then. But we do expect to be joined by a doctor, Dr. B.A. Briggs, who's public health physician and environmental advocate, and he will be joining us shortly. So, Mr. Abels, apart from the illegal refineries around the Port Harcourt area, what else has been discovered to be responsible for this Soot?
Yeah, first of all, Soot, it's... I lost you. I didn't hear the last part of your statement.
I said, apart from the illegal refineries, what else has been what else can you say is responsible for the overcloud in that area, in the Rivers State area?
Okay, when we talk about Soot, we're talking about particulate matter that is submicron particulate matter. It's about 2.5 microns. And we found out that scientifically there are about 14 different sources of pollution, air pollution. But we've emphasized on Soot because this particular matter, this particular pollution is caused by the activities of non-state actors who are refining illegal stolen crude. So that constitutes about 70 or 80% of it. The next level of pollution comes from bitumen plants, and we really don't have many. A couple of them are there. The last time, one of them was shut down while the commissioner was trying to install, activate air pollution monitors. He was sacked at the press conference. So basically, the bulk of the problem we have is originated by the activities of illegal artisanal refiners of illegally stolen crude.
This has been happening for some years now, maybe about, 6, 7 years? Is it getting better?
We first noticed it in 2016, and initially we thought it was because the cleaners were not doing the houses properly. A lot of house helps lost their jobs. It was later when everybody started complaining, we had confronted the government, and by 20 they promised set up a task force, they were going to deal with it. by 2018, we had no option but to hit the streets. And the media came and they were quite helpful, all the radio stations and media houses in Port Harcourt, and young people. In short, everybody was concerned, young, old. Politicians tried to deride what we were doing. The APC said that we were trying to embarrass the president. The PDP said that we were trying to demarket River State. But today we've been vindicated when we see Wike running around production sites trying to sort out the state. But today the problem has gone down because a lot of people do not know that, a lot of people acknowledge that the Soot there's a less Soot over the clouds in Port Harcourt. But they don't know it's because the artisanal refiners do not have access to crude anymore. Today, a lot of the crude is currently being badged because the operators were losing almost 80 to 90% of what they were producing. If you remember correctly, a couple of months back, NNPC reported that total oil production dropped from 1.9 million barrels to about 900,000 barrels. Today, it's gone up to 1.4 million because they're badging their crude products. I think that has contributed a lot to it. And that also proves the fact that because that the bulk of the pollution we're getting concerning Soot comes from the activities of illegal artisanal refiners.
What kind of health hazards have you noticed in the course of your work?
When we got involved in it, we decided to pursue it to its. We decided to pursue it beyond just advocacy. We had to study what constitutes the particulate matter and its risks. We found that it contained mercury. 10 years ago in River State, you hardly knew people who had cancer. Today in River State, you know at least one person who has died, who has succumbed to cancer. Today in River State, you know of one child that has renal problem. Today in River State, you know of somebody who has died of kidney failure. Today in River State, you know you must have attended a wedding 5 years ago that 5 years after they are yet to have a child. The signs are everywhere, the ominous, they are everywhere. They've become part of our system. These are the things we have led. So when we even spoke at the Nigerian Medical Association Forum in 2018, Professor Chike promised that they will conduct a survey, and the survey led by River State government revealed that over a 5-year period, trend was established that there were 22,000 plus respiratory-related deaths. So all of those things are coming out to play. And there are recent incidents of people dropping dead. We don't know what the causes are, and that's why our recent call has been that River State must make it a state policy for us to begin to conduct autopsy. Being the hub of the hydrocarbon industry for 60 years, it means we are highly endangered, and there's a need for us to conduct a medical audit and an environmental audit of those who reside there and of our fauna and our flora. And we're also saying that the UNEP report, which was established in 2011, for which HYPREV was created, to us at the Extra Step Initiative is obsolete because where they are located, border, for instance, it's one of the major action points for artisanal refining. So we need to change this conversation, come to the table without antagonizing anybody, but begin to think of how we can proactively put in place, beyond buildings, policies which will help prolong lives in River State. And autopsies will define the direction where these things are coming from.
Mr. Rebels, would you say that it's, this Soot menace is only produced from the activities of illegal miners, as you mentioned, or there are some other sources that people may be unaware of?
There are 14 other sources of air pollution.
Okay, go ahead, please.
There are 14 sources of air pollution, and even more. You know, there's gas flaring, the combustion, carbon monoxide from vehicles, the pollution coming from bitumen plants, and so on. But the bulk of what we have suffered in Rivers State, 80% of it is caused by the activities of artisanal mining, refining of crude oil. I make bold to say that because now that crude oil is no longer available in the pipelines, Port Harcourt, the air in Port Harcourt, the sky has become clearer. There's less soot, even though if you go and check the air quality index, you find that the air is still considered to be hazardous to those who live there. So we make bold to, we believe and we know based on scientific research, you go to our website, you see research, in our petition to the UN, we didn't just write, and the World Health Organization, we didn't just write a petition. We attached about 4 different studies that had been conducted on this subject matter when we petitioned the United Nations. So we are sure of what we're saying. Today, if you go to Port Harcourt or you do a survey, you find that everybody says, Soot down, the Soot no day again. No? Yes, no day. It's not that it's completely eradicated. Because of the pipeline surveillance that's been initiated by the NNPC, where we saw, like in Delta State, several illegal connections to them. And currently, a lot of crude oil is no longer being pumped into the pipeline. They are ferried by barge to the export terminals in Brass and Bonny.
Would you then say that since the IOCs knew that they could do this, that it's something they should have done, consequently, the Soot shouldn't have been at such a level to the end that, as you said, a number of people have died from it. Some people are having terminal diseases now as a result of that. Is there any way you would say there are some things that the IOCs should have been compelled to do, which they didn't do, and consequently the Soot menace that happened?
I tend to, we at the Extra Step Initiative, we tend to deviate from that popular conversation where we tend to blame the IOCs. The IOCs are investors. Yes, we know that in terms of social corporate responsibility, there are things they're supposed to do. But we're in your kitchen. Primary responsibility resides with you, government. Yes, we know that environment is a federal inspired thing. Don't forget that it's a joint venture. And the NNPC, now limited, owns 60% of it. The Nigerian government is the regulator. Nigerian government is the enforcer. The laws in nature are all federal in nature. So a foreigner who has come to invest your country should not dictate what you should do. Yes, you should tell them what to do. When you create policies, then you ensure that you enforce those policies. So it is not the position of, yes, I know that they need to be socially responsible, but it is our responsibility as a people, for us, we the people, and the people we've elected, and the bureaucrats who are the civil servants who we have employed to run these things, to ensure that they do what is supposed to be done. Yes, the state governments will hide behind, they will say, yes, the laws for environment are federal in nature. Yes, but in the same instance, we saw where Rivers State government picketed the NDDC when, for taxes, they did the same to the Port Harcourt refinery. If you look at the Federal Ministry of Environment, you also have a State Ministry of Environment, you also have environment secretaries at the local government levels. What have they been doing? You, the state government, I think should lead the conversation in this kind of things, whereby beyond brick and mortar, we should begin to talk about, the world is talking about the environment. World Health Organization, as of 2018, says that the next biggest killer is air pollution. And you, you're the hub of the oil and gas sector, you're receiving billions of dollars. If you are not, how come you're able to build 12 bridges in 7 years, in less than 3-4 years? Yeah. It's because you have money. So beyond building things, yes, it's commendable, the roads are commendable, but the people need to be healthy. That conversation must begin from the local level, from the host communities to the state governments. Rivers State government came up with a report that there were 22,000 respiratory-related deaths in the state over a 5-year period. We have gone to court, asking for the court to to enforce our right to a clean environment, because Nigeria is a signatory to the African Charter on the right to a clean environment, and it's been domesticated. But the very few cases, precedents legally on environment. But what are you doing as a direct beneficiary of this menace? So if we as a non-profit organization have commenced this conversation, the report is about 3 or 4 years old that the Rivers State government initiated. It's on the shelf. We should expect that they should have started some deliberate actions on how to do these things. Well, there are agencies like the NDDC which can be approached. Yeah. Environment is part of the conversation.
We'll definitely get to...
Let's not depend on...
My apologies. We'll get to the solutions and recommendations and all, but to speak to the question and your response to it, you said now the IOCs barge the crude as opposed to passing it through the pipelines and all. Was that counsel or decree or policy from the federal government, or was the initiative of the IOCs themselves?
It's from the major. It's from NM. I think the policy came from NMPC.
Okay, so essentially you're saying at the end of the day, in all of these, the IOCs themselves are completely exonerated. Is that what you're saying?
You're supposed to. I'm not saying they're completely exonerated, because they come up with policies, and they do things that will enable them make profit in a responsible way, considering what had transpired in Ogoni that led to the death of
I asked that question, Mr. Abels. Just my apologies. I asked that question because, I mean, if I'm in business and I see that I'm losing almost 50% of what I should be getting from the business that I invested in, I'll be very, very concerned. And going by the words of the NNPCL GMD, he said this conversation didn't start 10, 20 years ago. It started more than 30 years ago. So it's something that the IOCs have been enduring for more than 30 years, according to the GMD of NNPC, and they didn't say anything. So it would mean then that one way or the other, they probably knew as well that these illegal refineries were there and the Soot menace was arising. They are also vulnerable to it because they have to breathe the same air as everyone else, and they kept quiet. That's the reason I'm asking. I'm not saying that they're not in business, it's our kitchen and all of that. All of that is understood. But then you also talked about social responsibility.
Well, they've not kept quiet. What they do, the way they function, they are minority partners in the conversation when it comes to the joint ventures. Everything they do goes through NNPC and NAPIMS. So I think when it comes to, they try as much as possible to keep away from the. I'm not speaking for them. I'm not saying they could not have spoken, but you know how things are in Nigeria, that such foreigners, they have to be particularly careful. So they try to speak to their community relations officers and their partners in NNPC. And I think that the people, I think and I believe that the people who should lead that conversation should have been the NNPC. And I think with the current GMD, we hear from him more often, unlike the former MDs and the GMDs in the past. So they own 60% of the joint ventures. So and the government is also the regulator. So the people we should hear from are not our partners in the business. The people we should hear from are our sons and daughters who run the NNPC and who are majority shareholders in in those oil transactions, and the regulators who are the ministries, departments, and agencies, given that have the statutory obligations to direct policies, enforce them, and make sure the people are protected and that business is done in a responsible way that is beneficial to the community and to the nation.
What you speak about is a very serious issue indeed, something that is causing health hazards to the people in that area and is also causing death. So, have there been any penalties for those who were found complicit in, getting us to this situation where we have Soot you know, over a whole area, a whole town.
Yeah, it's a criminal offense, but you know how Nigeria is. When issues happen, people try to justify them. You have even had people coming up to say, people in government, high up in government, coming to say, oh, why are we vilifying these people? Why don't we set up cooperatives and set up mini refineries so that we use the local expertise and bring it to and apply it, since we're having scarcity of products and so on. And I said in this time and age, so if you see that in terms of prosecution, no agency is giving account of how many cases they've won and why they have lost cases. Nobody's checking, nobody's asking. So people are emboldened. So and because nothing is being done, an agent and a government agency like NNPC had to pay billions of naira to bring private people to come and enforce surveillance on their pipelines. It means nothing is well. Nothing is well. If you're expecting to see people punished, we've seen one or two cases, but we will have expected that if the nation has taken this call seriously, that by now there should be a form of collaboration between the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Health at all tiers of government, and come up with a policy that, look, what these people have done has exposed these people who live here to this level of danger. Can we invest in this area? Even bring in multilateral agencies. But I can even shock you. We've written 3 petitions to the World Health Organization. Till date, they've refused to even acknowledge our petition. United Nations, the same thing. But they talk to us through their agents informally. Nobody has refused to come and have this conversation on the table, that there's danger and people are dying. Because we don't conduct autopsy, because we don't keep data, people are not talking about it. But I always will challenge people. Today in Rivers State, you know at least 1 or 2 persons who have died from cancer. You know 1 or 2 persons who are in hospital suffering from cancer. We know that today everybody, because of the prevalence of cancer cases now, everybody knows where that the radiotherapy place somewhere in Zaria. There's one in Ibadan, Enugu, because the chicken has come home to roost. So in terms of convictions, it's a far-fetched and a tall order. We're yet to say anything. There's no deliberate attempt to deal with the issues. So we're left on our own to continue our advocacy, and particularly with help from platforms like yours, which you have availed us today. We want to thank you.
Does the use of masks help in any way?
Can you take that again?
Does the use of masks, face masks, help in any way?
Face masks, yes, they will help. Yes, the face masks help. But what about when you go to bed?
True.
The particular matter is about 2.5 micron. It can get into your nostrils, it can get into your bloodstream. So it's limited. It's limited. The only way it's advocacy to prevent people from doing that business, and for us to begin to advise on ways on how to keep your environment clean. Ensure that when you're cleaning your air conditioner, make sure you clean them at least twice a month. Bring them down, take them to the tap, use bleach, and wash them, scrub. So face masks. What about the kids who will play outside? We will have acid rain in Rivers State. We do have acid rain. A face mask will not protect you from that. But if we begin to enforce properly, if government takes it and puts it on the front burner, like the way they put roads and bridges, that lives are more important than brick and mortar. People, right now, everybody's aware. People are feeling the pangs and the pains. But we need to, we respect government. If government, your local government chairman and your National Assembly member is talking about it, yeah, we need to commend, and telling you the consequences of allowing your children to participate in these things. Beyond going to prison, that they will suffer bonds, almost 90-degree burns. You go to the burn center, University of Port Harcourt, you see them there. Those who have suffered accident, and children would die, indigent people, women, old people, pregnant women. When the government begins to talk about them and begins to talk about how we can ameliorate the situation, people will take it serious. It's beyond a face mask. Face mask won't protect you that much.
Okay.
Now, in order to erase or reduce this menace to the barest minimum, I mean, you said the other time that the Soot has massively reduced because illegal activities, activities of illegal mining have been greatly dissipated in Rivers State, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in a number of other states around Rivers as well. The question then is, how do we ensure this is sustainable? Because it's not the first time the Rivers State governor, for instance, will go around from place to place, disrupting the activities of illegal miners in various communities, in Rivers State, Port Harcourt, and the rest of them, all over the place like that. So what are the things that you think need to be done to sustainably ensure that this menace of illegal refining does not come back again after this government, because it will seem that that's the kind of thing that happens, in terms of providing sustainable employment or engagement, profitable engagement for the people who are involved in these illegal and hazardous activities?
Thank you very much. You've mentioned a very important thing. If the people had jobs, they probably would not go and endanger their life. It's quite a dangerous business to do, trying to refine crude oil. And I'm an ambassador to the Bond Center in the University of Port Harcourt. You see a lot of young people, different ages, women, men, girls, who suffer from this thing. But the politicians whom we've employed have refused to have the conversation of employment. Whenever you talk to the average politician, or whenever they come on this campaign season, they're all talking about brick and mortar. They think that the brick and mortar will cover the negative statistics that the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics is showing us concerning employment and underemployment when it comes to very liquid states like Rivers State. If the people had jobs, they would not go into that business. So this forum, we need to deal with employment. The governor has done his bit to the best of their ability. We need to go to the next, so that next government coming in must deal with the issues of employment. When there are jobs, they don't need to create all the jobs. They need to create enabling environments to provide these jobs. If they've forgotten, I might use the opportunity to remind them that Timari, which is like LASMA, had over 2,000 people. We need to bring it back. We need to bring back the River State Sustainable Development, which deals with agriculture, which brought extension before all over the world. Those are massive centers for absorbing of labor and they build skills, and helps to, once there's jobs, crime goes down and people are gainfully employed. Yeah. Now, at the federal level, I don't think that when it comes to conveying of crude oil by barge, for us to hit the production limits of our competitors, particularly with the energy crisis in the whole of Europe because of Ukraine war, the barge thing will have limitations. I know that new pipelines, the AKK pipelines and so on, things have been done. And I think they might need to increase vigilance. But most importantly, like the question you asked, when you were trying to ask, what are the IOCs doing? Beyond the IOCs, you have indigenous producers of oil now. They are all over the place who are handling most of the creek platforms because the IOCs are moved out into the ocean to drill oil. So, but we need to all come back to the table and have a conversation. This conversation we're having now on what to do, how to do. We need to audit the environment. We need to upgrade that UNEP report. It shouldn't be all about the Ogoni. Yes, why the Ogoni own has to be updated. We need to know this. It's all intertwined. And in this thing, the Constitutional Assembly and local government, the State Assembly, and the National Assembly must all come together. We need to empower NOSDRA, the enforcers, to ensure that And the bill that the president refused to sign concerning those regulators of the environment, we need to sign those bills so that they will become more empowered to enforce this, to enforce compliance from the IOCs, the other indigenous operators.
I was gonna ask a question.
NNPC.
I was gonna ask a question around
yes.
that enforcement. Just a second, just so you can answer it all together. I was gonna ask a question around that enforcement. When I was growing up, and I'm pretty sure it was the same experience you had, environmental officers resided in the local government areas, and they did a yeoman's job, ensuring that people in the various communities complied with basic environmental rules and laws of the communities and of the state. How significant do you see that being for environmental officers at the local government level, environmental officers or environmental security, if I can use that term, at the state level in collaboration with the IOC's SHE program that you also mentioned the other time? What's the primary responsibility of especially the local government, environmental officers at the local government level? And in what way do you think we can strengthen them to ensure that the local government, where these things happen, they don't happen again?
Now, you are obviously referring to sanitation officers, even though they have environmental officers. And I like their uniforms are very lovely. Yes, but now what can they do? They can act as whistleblowers. They can act as whistleblowers, while the state environmental officers, state working with the Ministry of Environment and the Federal Ministry of Environment, which has state representatives and agencies that can come in to, when they whistleblow, they come with the security operatives to deal with these issues. Then there's another part which we need to deal with, which is we need to begin to give signatures to our crude oil. You know that the world frowns at minerals that are taken from conflict zones. For instance, blood diamonds. Yeah. So, but the people who have capacity to test and provide results concerning when when they're apprehended is DPRO. I know they've been. Their nomenclature has changed, but they were not designed to deal with non-state actors. So they need to be expanded. There has to be an expansion for testing that any crude that is stolen, that is seized, when they see it, when the whistle is because these things are not hidden, you can't hide the flames. When they blow the whistle at local level, the state and the federal people come in. When the product is, instead of setting fire to it, they immediately take a sample and run, and they immediately, the signature from that sample will tell you exactly where it was taken from. And with that, you automatically, NOSDRA and her sister agency immediately know that there's a potential spill in that place. So they begin to provide for it. So we need to go, those in government, the elected and the bureaucracy, we need to come, and IOCs, everybody, we need to come together and come up with a policy. And the policy is standard operating procedure. Policies are in place, but we can modify them, then create effective SOPs that can enable us act immediately and on time. So for instance, Channels announces weather reports. For years, we've been begging the state government, why don't we set up air quality monitoring centers? They're cheap, they're less than $200. So that there are 24 radio stations in Rivers State, so that every morning as they're announcing the weather reports, they tell you what's the air quality index for the area. That children, if you're pregnant, if you're a child, please do not go. If you're going to wear a face mask, because the air is polluted and hazardous to you. Those who have asthma and so on can be widely advised. The radio stations, like what Channels is doing commendably at X3M, and what people are doing for us today now, is highly commendable. It's free and it's non-profit. You're using your time and resources to enable us to prolong lives in Rivers State. Once again, I would like to say thank you. So nothing will happen if we're not deliberate about it. And this deliberate nature of thing means that we need to take governance to back the way it used to be before CNN came, before Channels came. Now, The addition of CNN and channels means that technology has come. Things are a bit easier for us, supposedly easier for us. We can learn from mistakes of other people and generate homegrown solutions. So it's not rocket science. We the people must compel action from those we've employed, either as elected people or as civil servants, to make this thing happen. If not, people will continue to die.
I think that's a good place to anchor it for today. Thank you very much for coming to enlighten us about this hazard in Rivers State. Mr. Eugene Abels, Executive Director, the Extra Step Initiative. He joined us from our studio in Abuja. Thank you very much, Mr. Abels, and good luck in what you're doing.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to have Dr. Briggs. Hopefully some other time we'll be able to engage him. Dear producer and director, that is unfair.
That made one hungry.
That's unfair. It's
making, I'm salivating.
It's criminal. Come on. Haba.
For people who haven't had breakfast.
For people who can't find Naira to go and buy those things.
To go.
That's wicked.
Oh dear, you can't buy prawn. You can't buy prawns and tell the woman you want to transfer. 500 Naira vegetable. I'm going to do transfer for 500.
No, she will transfer the vegetable to you too. Well, you see, most people give up on balanced diet, especially in this age and time. Come on.
It's hard to balance it now.
To balance even the account.
To start with.
You know, because, of course, there's that confusion on how to combine homemade food like eba or fufu, or what's that one? The starch in the Niger Delta.
Starch?
Starch.
Yes, it's called starch. And I love it.
And fura. Kai. Into their diet. So, eating a balanced diet is not an expensive endeavor. But if you are able to infuse Nigerian foods into your balanced diet or balanced plan, maybe you'll be able to have a healthy goal or achieve your healthy goal of, I don't even know how to put that.
What? Why are you suddenly stalling?
That picture is very, 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 very wicked.
The man is still salivating.
Come on.
Never mind.
That is what they call internal affairs. No shaki.
Unfortunately, you can't internal affairs right now because there's no... Except you go and buy your shaki from the supermarket, of course.
Which is more expensive.
Buy your shaki. They pack them now, you know, in supermarkets.
Yes, it is more expensive.
Of course it is.
I won't be able to
the
say...
air conditioning, their packaging.
I won't be able to say 5,000, no, 2,000. I won't be able to negotiate.
Okay, you want to eat that thing, yeah, right? go to the supermarket and buy your momo.
Well, we want to talk about how you can, within the means of what we have as a people, create a healthy lifestyle with Nigerian foods. This morning we have Ikwo Uko, who is a nutritionist, join us to have this conversation. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Ayo. My pleasure to be here.
What do you think of that picture?
It was wicked.
Wicked?
That's all I can say. And it actually looked like Edika Ikong, you know, with some, you know, dry smoked prawns peeping out. I saw something that looked like shaki somewhere, you know, edging on the side of the plate. This
is surgical analysis.
And all that was needed was, you know, well-made fufu to go with it.
Or pounded yam.
Or pounded yam, whichever.
Oh, God.
Let me just report my children.
They shouldn't do this to us again, please.
Let me report my children to you.
Tell me.
They watched that video where you said our solid...
Oh, tennis ball size.
Tennis ball size. Mm-hmm. If it was for you, it would have been understandable because you already play tennis. I don't play tennis. And I don't like tennis. Now, they almost literally measured, Daddy, you're not supposed to eat more than that. What's your business? Wow. Are you buying?
Makes sense what they're telling you.
So
makes sense.
That's just to say,
yes,
And I will also, maybe they have started reducing, I will start reducing something, e.g., their pocket money. Yes, well, yes, everybody getting on.
We'll see.
But you know, the challenge of a healthy lifestyle with food, first of all, how significant a challenge do you think it is?
You know, I always say that if we can just manage the food side of things, which is the preventive health side, then our visits to the hospitals will be minimized. Yeah. And really, this is not any time you should step at the gate of any hospital. Because it looks as if there's an instruction that from the gate man to the receptionist, you should not be allowed to leave that hospital without dropping money.
Plenty of it.
Plenty of it at that. So when we manage what we eat better and we make healthy choices, then you find out that, you know, our visits to the hospitals are minimized. That's what preventive health is all about. And that's what food brings to us. Of course, in addition to managing today, you know, for later years in terms of, you know, our health and our ability to be functional even as we get older.
Why is it a challenge?
I think the first thing is knowledge. Or should I say too much knowledge these days? Because you hop on the internet and my goodness, there's so many things going on. I also see that even nutrition as a subject is evolving. It has been evolving for years. 1 minute they tell you egg, you can't eat so much egg because of cholesterol. And also, don't forget, there's a lot of food politics going on.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Food politics, that's new.
Depending on which ingredient seems to favor a certain country or business, then you start to run that ingredient down. I take palm oil, for instance. Because we consume quite a bit of palm oil here, oh my goodness, there was a time on the internet it was palm oil is the worst thing you can have, you know, in your meals. But soon after, we in Africa, or certainly in Nigeria, realized that people were playing into the political arena of palm oil. Yeah. So we started telling them, stop it there. Our palm oil is good enough for us. All we need to do, just like any other fat, manage the quantity, reduce the quantity in your cooking, and that's it. So you have a lot of conflicting things, but I think the major thing is lack of knowledge in making healthy food choices.
And if you remember, after that, all that propaganda then ended, they said that the next thing after sliced bread was palm oil.
Yes.
That you could even be taking one teaspoon or one dessert spoon a day.
Yes.
That it was so good for you.
So, you know, behind all of those things, you find out that there's some politics, some business interests happening there. So one has to be careful about what you pick up on the internet and what you run with as far as food is concerned.
But unfortunately, most of the people who you alluded to having this challenge, vulnerability to health challenges and all, may or may not be in places where they don't have that much access or that significant access to the internet to download all these things. But it would also seem like most of the people in the villages, they eat well anyway.
Yes, they eat well because the foods are available to them. Natural foods are available to them. Most people have back gardens. So your ugu is growing at the back of the house, a few okra, you know, plants around the place. They're not heavy into beef, let's face it, you know, how can they even afford it? So they hunt for their antelopes and
it's fresh.
It's fresh.
And it's lean.
Lean. They have their chicken, you know, free roaming around. Free range around the place. So naturally, they're not exposed to what we're exposed to here. Take the average person living in Lagos. You leave home at 5 a.m. You get into traffic. The next thing that appears in front of you is some pastry, you know, being hawked. You grab that, you eat, you get to work, you know, you're seated. So there's everything in the city that works against, you know, the city dweller. And therefore, the person in the city has to make that extra effort to understand what to eat. what to choose from, when to eat, and all of that. The person in the village, you walk miles and miles. So even if you did not want to exercise, you are naturally exercising anyway. You're moving. So those are the things that differentiate the two people.
We're talking about creating a balanced diet with our own foods. So, okay, that soup now, okay. that's the place to start.
You see? That it's not easy to ignore.
That wicked picture that was shown. How, give us some examples of balanced diets, plural, using our own foods only.
Generally, if I just go with this simple soup and swallow, particularly vegetable soup and swallow, is all complete there. All you need to do is to add fruits for the day and, drink a lot of water. Now, where does the problem come from? I think it's about even the soup and swallow is the portion. Because if I go for 4 tennis balls of eba and a little soup, there is an imbalance there. It is still soup and swallow. So it's about also proportion within what we have.
My apologies.
Yes.
You speak to the general understanding of many people. I want to eat. The first thing I want is to belly full. Once I'm hungry, I want to fill my tummy and feel satisfied.
Yes.
That is the number one concern of most people.
And I'm not going to feel that way with 1 tennis ball.
And I'm not going to feel that way with 1 tennis ball swallow. And the soup, we have to eat it like 10 times before you go finish.
Okay, let's start from the basics. When we say balance, what are we balancing? We are balancing proteins, which we could have from fish, meat, beans, and all of that. We're balancing that with having some carbohydrates like a rice and eba, plantain, all of those things. And we're also putting somewhere there vegetables. Ugu, water leaf, carrot, cabbage, okra, all of that are vegetables. Then, of course, fruits, and then water. In this mix, most likely, we are going to use palm oil or some oil, to cook it. So already that's a balance. Now, within those groups, we're saying focus a lot more on vegetables and fruits. Have more vegetables in that whole mix. By the way, you might not have this for every meal. Let's face it, the reality is that you might not. But we're saying throughout the day, ensure that you have those. If you can afford it, please, by all means, let's have all of that in the mix. Now, if we come to today, if I look at the average person living in the city, I take a normal stew, for instance. Stew is pepper, tomato, onion, you fry, you add your protein. Do you know you can do so much with that stew? I think the Yorubas have learned to do it much more than people from the southeast, because you have your basic stew. Okay, you want to eat eba. You make ewedu, which is jute leaf, or you make okra, or you make a vegetable and mix with it. Stew. In the southeast, I remember then in school, we used to call it chemistry soup, Now, if you're not from the southwest, look, I can make stew for a week, which I do. Midweek, I stop by at the market and I buy green, what the Yorubas call, I think, tete. And just chop it. No, nothing, just stir fry in a frying pan. Of course, you clean and wash and all that. Stir fry and add to the stew with your rice by the side. That same stew you had cooked. So day 1, you eat it as it is. Day 2, you add spinach if you want. Day 3, you can add carrot and cabbage to the same stew when you have portioned yours. So there are so many ways we can stretch that. So it's not that every time you want to eat, you then go and tick the calendar. But we're saying, just use your eye. Vegetables and fruit should be about half of that plate. You have your carbohydrates, you have your proteins, of course, depending on your age. Because this whole story about tennis ball size is for adults like you and Alero.
I'm a very small boy. I'm a young youth.
Most of the time, let's face it, you have cars. You're seated. You're sedentary. So we don't need as much. But for the young children that are running around and young adults, yes, they do need that. But even for them, we should manage all of this, because when they get older, certain things will start to manifest.
Let me sneak this in, that the children.
Yes.
You were here one day when we had a girl who said she had to literally incentivize the children to eat vegetables.
Yes.
How do we?
Oh, no, there are easy ways. You can blend vegetables into things.
Okay.
You know, because when you leave it in little chunks, they sort it out and leave it for you. I mean, if I want, there are ways of mixing it. There are ways of incorporating it into lollies. You know, you make mango is in season, for instance. Now you blend mango and put it in a popsicle and put a stick there, it's frozen. They're having fun with it, licking it. And in that mango, if you want, you can actually blend a little carrot into it. They won't know because the color is yellow and orange. They'll hardly know. They've taken what they should take, and you move on. It's about being creative, even with the food that we have. You know, so there's so many ways we can get children.
You said something very important the other time, and I don't think we should gloss over it. And I think many people should actually pay attention to it. And that's the fact that people do not have enough education, or maybe they have information, but not education about nutrition.
Absolutely.
What are the basic steps that need to be known and taken for one to at least, and easy?
Yes.
Because as you said, the average Lagosian or average urban Nigerian lives a fast life.
True.
Always on the move. So what are those things that you would say are basic, easy, non-complicated, that they need to do as frequently as possible in their days or weeks to maintain this healthy lifestyle with food?
So let me start with fruits and vegetable. I would say for fruits, for instance, go for fruits that are in season. We have agbalumo in season now. We have mango in season now.
Agbalumo, slapping jaw.
Yes, or African star apple. So check out fruits that are in season. They'll be cheaper then. Enjoy it while it's there. Of course, when it's not in season, yes, it will be more expensive, but go for that. Vegetables, I think we're so blessed with vegetables in this part of the world. Every street market that you pass by, you'll find ugu, you'll find green. Make sure you add that to your meal. The proteins, yes, today they're very expensive. I mean, to buy beef of 2,000 Naira, my goodness, you have to cut it like fly eyes, to identify it in the soup. So, but there are cheaper alternatives. Not, when I say cheaper, I mean cheaper, not that it's inexpensive. Something like shower, we call it bonga fish.
Bonga fish is expensive now.
I know, but it's cheaper than beef. It is good protein as well. You could have that, blend it, and add it to the soup. Then you go to the carbohydrates. I would always recommend, let's go for maybe whole grains where we can find them. And I'm talking about millet. It's something we hardly consume, certainly not in the South. Millet is what you use to
millet?
You boil. You just boil millet. I have used it for, I use it for breakfast. You boil millet till it is soft, and all I do is that I add yogurt, liquid yogurt to it, and it is fantastic.
So it's supposed to be like a cereal?
It's like a cereal, breakfast cereal. So instead of going for expensive things, there's so many cheap alternatives. I said millet, I said fonio. We call it acha in the north. These things are available. So if we maybe shift our attention a little bit from the familiar and expensive.
Which is what, my apologies, I've been a little disturbed.
Yes.
Disturbed, not just concerned. Because they say that concern is diplomatic language. Disturbed by the fact that we seem to have just a few options these days. Rice,
Beans.
What else?
Yeah.
Swallow.
Swallow. And even the swallow is limited. Amala, eba,
Fufu.
fufu,
Pounded yam.
pounded yam. No, poundo.
Poundo.
In
Poundo.
most cases.
Yes.
Only those 4. Where are the other Nigerian foods?
They're there. The foods are there, but we are not making use of them. I think it's about familiarity. We're all familiar with rice, and that's it. If I take acha, for instance, a cereal that takes you less than 5 minutes to cook. I mean, the average time that it will take you to cook a cup of rice is about 10 to 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
But
How
for
does
is about
acha look?
It's like a little sand, grains of sand. But you have the destoned acha package you sell in stores. It's not very common in the South, I would agree. But you can use acha when it's blended for swallow. It has low glycemic index, particularly for people that have diabetes. It is gluten-free for those that are, allergic to gluten. But again, it's back to what do we know? But if you go to the streets of Kano or Jos and talk acha, everybody's familiar with it. But if you come to the South, there's something about also resistance, even for us as Nigerians adopting each other's foods. When I show things like me and kuka, for the average Yoruba person, it is kilelei.
No, but I grew up on my street. I lived on the island when I was very small. Fakolujo Street, Lagos Island, not too far from Itafaji. On the street, they sold tuwo.
Yes.
With, was it Begiri that they were selling? I don't even know. But the thing...
Yeah, me and Taushe, tuwo. And, but what happens is that if you go to the settlements in Lagos, take Agege, for instance, or Idiaraba, where you have the Hausa settlement, you find those foods.
Yes.
But is the adoption of these foods by other
tribes?
Yes. Madam, we're running out of time. But I'm going to compel you to agree to something. You have to support me on this. We need to have a short recordings of you, 5 minutes.
Yes.
Make this. This is what it will give you, and these are the benefits or health benefits, as you said. Because if we can cut down on how much we spend on treating these ailments, there's a high chance that we'll buy insurance for ourselves and wait for government to catch up on us.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I mean, there's so much we can do. I mean, as a food blogger, I share a lot of these things on my timeline. But I think it's also about being deliberate to go the way you have. You've said it, which is little snippets, just to help people make choices. And because also the disposable income to buy expensive food
is reducing.
It's reducing.
Yeah.
So we need to do that.
We have to thank you. After the election, we're going to bring you back. Then we will know where we are going. Ikwo Uko is a nutritionist. And Ikwo Uko is a nutritionist. And please, don't just use that word nutritionist for fun. It's not be yoke. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
again.
having me.
Okay. You need a lot of energy to do the thing that our next guest does. And that energy has come from this kind of food. Well, who is this guest? We've been told that he's a he. He's a he.
We can tell you now, because he's going to walk in another 2 minutes or so.
But we'll not tell you now. After now.
Yes, no marks for guessing who our guest is. Wow. We couldn't hide it forever, could we? Seun Kuti. He is the youngest son of Afrobeat pioneer Fela Anikulapo Kuti. He has spent most of his life preserving and extending his father's political and musical legacy as the leader of the Egypt 80.
That's quite an inheritance, right?
I didn't inherit the Egypt 80 though.
Okay.
Most people say Seun inherited Egypt 80, but I didn't, because I've been in the band since I was 8.
Okay.
Touring with my dad, after, because he used to always take us on the road. And as a kid, I just saw his life like, man, this is what I want to do. I mean, this has to be the easiest job
in the world.
I was a kid. What did I know? You go on stage, you sing your songs, everybody love you. My daddy used to only get paid in cash. Father used to do bands, so after every show, they had to bring all the money backstage like this. Everywhere full of money, women. I'm like, what? I mean,
what else can you want?
I
wouldn't have been happy if he was still alive now. No cash. No cash.
No, fella would have had cash. We would have opened POS in our house. Because I'm sure one person with cash would have been my dad. I would just go open POS because of KK. See? I'll have bought private jets by now.
Oh, really?
From my POS business.
There's something that I find particularly fascinating about what you do on your website. That in spite of the political and musical legacy of your dad, you've also chosen to infuse our cultures into your music and into the things that you do. Why do I personally find that exciting? Because I look at Nigeria's music scene now, the transition between the 70s music, which was a lot local, high life and the rest, to the 80s, which was mostly pop, the foreign pop, to the 90s, which was Nigerians now taking over, but more pop, now to this current generation that we have doing Afro pop and the rest of it. I'm looking for the Africanness or the cultures and all of that in most. Not that it doesn't exist, but in most of them, it doesn't seem to exist. What's your take on that?
To be honest, it didn't used to. But I mean, there's this new young artist, Shay Vibes or something. And if you see his video, that boy director shot, very cultural video, to the extent that he was reciting incantations with juju in his hand, part of the video, what they call juju, I don't know what juju is, what they call juju, so for me, the young people are beginning to see that they cannot outwhite the Europeans.
Outwhite the white.
Yeah, they can't, but the mistake we made is that in the early 2000s, we allowed foreigners come to dictate to us what African music should sound like, I don't want to name names, but these companies that project so-called African music to the world, they dictated the kind of content. And these companies are also owned by many of these luxury brands, just as they do in America. So they use the music to promote the things that really make them money, which is their fashion lines, their cars, all these luxury brands. So our music was inclined to also sell these things. But I think as young African people are beginning to come more into themselves, it will not only be visual when they want to be cultural, it will also become vocal as well. So it's time. I think we are growing with our nation.
How does it make you feel that most of the music that is selling all over the world now, and I mean music from here that is selling all over the world, is called Afro beats, which has infused Afro beats into it, which was started by yours truly, Fela himself?
I think it was his marketing. If you look at dancehall music, when it started, it was called raga. So it could sound like reggae, so that people could know where it's coming from. Our music, even though it has created big buzz in the world, we're still becoming, we're not yet a household name in the globe, We're still looking for our music to start breaking markets where they have their own pop sound already. And until you start doing that, your pop music is not doing anything. The way Drake, for example, releases an album, is #1 in Korea, #1 in Japan, Our music can't do that yet because Korea has K-pop. Japan is keyed into that. you know, in Brazil and all these places. So we are still working on that. I think Afrobeats is the way to market this to the world, you know. So I really don't see.
I have to tell you something, Seun. The fact that our songs have Afro in it
is enough.
Is enough for me. Is enough, right?
White that has Afro in it, and they have beats. For me, it's enough identity.
Yeah,
because if we are looking for, I mean, we've been asking ourselves for eons, what do we have to give to the world? We had, now we're talking about having movies. But what's selling more now seems to be the music.
Music.
You can't recite the lyrics or the lines of a movie on the road. But you can recite that of a music, of a song.
Yeah, the music is different for, you know, like, that's why I always say to fellow artists, we cannot believe the lies of the oppressor when they tell us, you know, you can make any music you want, you know, look at Arnold Schwarzenegger making violent movies. Is that the reason why people are killing themselves? The power of music is not the same as the power of a film. For example, your favorite film, you watch it maybe twice a year. 3 times a year, max, you watch your favorite movie. But your favorite song, even when it is not playing, you are singing it to yourself. It's a mantra. There's a spiritual connection with music and human beings. It becomes a chant, becomes meditation. It begins to shape your personality.
Now, for me, how then do we use that for conscientizing Nigerians or Africans? I'm talking about owning the identity and using that identity to let the world know.
Pass a message.
Yes.
People have asked me this question a lot, and I always say to everybody that we put too much pressure on artists. You know, when we say, you know, we expect them to use their music for, you know, artists must change the world. We cannot change the world alone.
But many have done.
Yeah, they have tried. This is the problem. It's true, I'm from that lineage. I'm Fela's son, for Christ's sake, you know. Bob Marley, you know. They have tried, but the problem is, if the engineer is not willing to engineer a new world, if the bankers are not willing to bank a new world, bankroll a new world, if the civil service servants are not willing to service a new world, if the journalists are not willing to write a new world, there's so little that music can do. If the professors are not willing to teach a new world, you know, so the musicians can just try and inspire. We are there to inspire. But
hear this.
If other social sciences are not willing to change the world as well, then music is just...
Hear this. Your father did his fair bit.
Yes.
Many, many years ago.
Yes.
And the songs the things he said in his songs, those many, many years ago, are still being said today.
Yes.
His songs are still being played today because his message is still relevant.
And I wish that Nigeria has moved past that. I wish that the engineers in Nigeria have truly been inspired by that message to engineer a new country. You know,
so you wish that those things were not still relevant today.
Exactly. I wish that, as Fela has spoken, it's really, as I said, all the social sciences and the experts in this field are the ones, we must change the world. It's not just music. Fela can sing all he's singing. If the engineers in Nigeria still betray that message, then it's just a message. If the bankers, the civil servants, the lecturers, the professors, the journalists, if they betray that message, then it's just that.
I agree with you. But you can't remonstrate the power of music.
No, I can't. That's what I'm saying. It inspires.
It has enough, not just invocative, but provocative power.
Yes.
It can get people to do stuff.
Yes, especially the masses.
Especially the masses.
But now we need the professional class to be inspired above their own interests. We need them to be inspired above their own interests. I'm not even talking about our politicians and the big elites that own everything. I'm saying we the gears that keep the machine turning.
We the people.
We the people.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I see a trend between you and your dad, and of course all of you in the family who are into music. How
into the arts.
Into the arts.
Oh, thank you, man.
How important is education?
Oh, wow.
I see that in what you're saying and the deep persuasion with which you're saying it. How important is education? And I'm not just talking about academics. I'm pretty sure you understand exactly what I'm talking about. How important is education in making
conscious or conscientizing music?
If education is understanding reality, you know, then it is the most important in making conscious music. And I'm not talking about the indoctrination we go through in formal education. You know, because I say to my friends all the time, I can't believe we live in Nigeria. You go through 12 years of primary and secondary school, and in your classroom, you never hear the word checkpoint, police checkpoint. You never hear it in your classroom. Nobody discusses it with you. How to navigate police checkpoint.
Well, maybe it's different now. Maybe it's different now because it was just recently I found out that my daughter in JS1 or so at the time, they now have a subject called security or something like that.
Well, I'll check because it's important. You know, because when I was growing up, 12 years, I didn't hear injustice, oppression, police brutality. None of these things were spoken of in class, and I went through and I'm educated. You know, so well, you know, if we remove the indoctrination, you know, education of just understanding our reality is the most important thing in making any kind of conscious music. You know.
Let's talk about you for a minute. We've only got 2.5 minutes to go. How did you manage? Because you said you began to sing with your father when you were 8 years. You were a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So you were singing with your father, touring with him, and yet going to school.
Yes, yes. Touring was mostly in the summer. So school was on holiday.
Okay.
So I could go on tour with my dad. But even when there was school, my dad would write a letter to the school, and I'd have to catch up when I got back.
Wow.
Yeah. I worked really hard as a kid. You know, I'm telling you.
So you've been working since you were 8?
Since I was 8. I told a friend of mine, you know, that I've been 32 years working non-stop. So nobody should be surprised if I retire at the age of 48 or something. You know, and I'm done. You know, I'm just living in my house, raising my children, like, done with work. Every day since I've been 8, I've been working all my life.
Wow, interesting. So we have just about 2 minutes, as Naira said. What do we expect from you? This is such a short time that we have you. You're going to have to promise to come back.
I will, anytime.
What should Nigerians be expecting, your fans all over the world, should be expecting from you
this year?
Wow, this is a big year for us. I mean, we just released a track with Janelle Monáe yesterday. It's doing really well, called Float. Please stream it, everybody, if you're watching. My album is dropping this year. I have a big legendary producer making it. I don't want to drop names yet. We're going to announce soon. I have some movies coming out.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a big year for me, so I'm really looking forward, you know, to how it unravels.
Well, let me play the role of a manager right now. She's my artist. She's an actress.
Yes, so, we'll find you a Roma. Don't worry. The casting director will reach out.
You have to talk to me.
No, we'll reach out directly to the actor. What do you mean? Mommy and son. Mommy and son business.
Mommy and Son Limited.
Okay. What? Is that you?
Yeah, that was me. That was me. This was during the launch of Fela's Confusion Breakbone. I used to open the shows for my dad, you know.
Wow.
That was me swagging away, you know.
Oh my God. How old were you at this point?
I must have been like 9. I was a little kid, you know.
Look at the dwarf.
Well, that is very
good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Kuti, thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.
We wish you all the best. Since you say you're going to have a very busy year.
Yeah, it's a big year.
We wish you all the best.
Thank you, ma. Thank you.
Seun Kuti brings to an end Sunrise for today. And don't forget, next Saturday is Election Saturday.
Election Day. Okay? By this time, you should have... What time is it now?
You should have voted.
Yes. Or be on the line.
Okay.
All opportunities will be open for you to express yourself to us, to let you know what's happening where you are. Take pictures, videos, whatever it is, sent to us, we'll put on air so the authorities can be aware. Let's get it right once more, because I can't say we've been getting it wrong all the while. We've made progress, even though in inches.
And just in case your eyes are asking, yes, we are going to vote when we finish work.
See,
next week.
There you have it.
Thank you very much for spending the last 3 hours odd with us on Sunrise. I'm Naira wishing you a very good weekend, and I hope to see you next week.
I'm Ayo Makinde. You can check your polling unit now if you haven't. Bye for now.